Matt Ryan, 21 of 24, 286 yards, 3 touchdowns. Still a dude.
It's better than this. Guys being dudes.
Matt Ryan, that's a dude.
Heisman Trophy.
Bronco Nagurski Award. Ultimate dudes.
Raji on my left. Herzlich on my right. 2 dudes.
O-line you. Bunch of dudes.
Dudes to the right. Dudes to the left. Stuck in the middle with you.
WZBC, the Boston College Radio Network, the voice of the Eagles.
Hello and welcome, sports fans, to another Wednesday night edition, first of the new year here, Two Dudes Sports. I'm Quinn Kelly with my broadcasting partner, TJ Hartnett, and we are ready to kick the New Year's off right with some more Two Dudes Sports.
I'm ready if you are, Quinn. It's going to be an exciting edition of Two Dudes. First of 2016, as you said. It's been a long-awaited return. We haven't been on for a long time. It was finals that got in the way, a couple games here and there, a couple different broadcasts. They had the Wednesday night game last week, the Miami game that we couldn't be on. So it's been over a month now that we haven't been in the AM studio. I missed it a lot, and I'm ready to get back with you. We have a lot to talk about, and I think we're going to start with a Boston College favorite. Yesterday, the ACC released a very important schedule that a lot of people were waiting for, but a lot of people knew about too. Boston College football back in the air. Some didn't want it to return. Some definitely wanted it to return. People take different sides on that. Regardless, they released it. We're ready to talk about it, and as we all know, opening up Dublin, Ireland, Georgia Tech, Boston College. You like this game? I'm gonna think you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the game. I love that we're heading over to Ireland. That's really exciting. It's huge for the program. Obviously, Georgia Tech's a good team to play over there. It's a rivalry game, so to speak. I mean, it's an ACC game. It's a big game. It's good to start with an ACC game to open the season. That's a refresher, a change of pace over the last couple of years where we've had UMass and Maine. So it's nice that you're going to have a game of importance that very first week. Even though it's not on the Heights, it'll be nice to be able to watch that and have something that you can really, really be invested in that first week. So I do like it. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Georgia Tech had a down year, but that doesn't talk about who they're going to be next year. You can say the same thing about Boston College. Two teams that had really bad years. Georgia Tech presumably could honestly have had a worse year than Boston College, coming in as one of the top-ranked teams in the country. They go in, they have a pretty putrid 2015 season. Now they have to open it up and make a statement against Boston College, and who knows what that Boston College team is going to present. We have a quarterback situation going on right now. Who knows who's going to be our starting quarterback over there in Dublin? We're going to have a questionable John Hilleman coming back. Who knows what he's going to be like, if he's going to be the same caliber. And beyond that, wide receivers, always a question mark. You're losing a lot of senior leaders in Simmons, Wojak, people of that kind. So Boston College is going to have some question marks. I'm sure Georgia Tech's going to have their own. Anyway, it's going to be pretty cool. 7:30 in the morning. Get those tailgates ready around 4. Boston College, Georgia Tech. I think that's the best way to open the season. I probably won't be in Dublin. Who knows? Maybe in some miracle I'll end up over there. But for right now, I'll be watching it. And like we said, exposure. That's
Absolutely
huge for the program. ESPN too. Moving on. UMass, something that we saw as freshmen 2 years ago. Boston College back at Gillette. Do you like this one? You like the New England rivalry?
So this goes back to now you're back stateside, and depending on how we finish up with Georgia Tech, whether we get the win there, whether we get the loss there, you have your first game back stateside in what should be a win, what should be something that you should lock up easy and early. It should be a good game for the team to kind of get back adjusted to being here and really get into the season, get some good momentum going forward into their next game.
Yeah, and something that I'd just like to say about UMass. UMass is opening up the 2016 season with one of the craziest schedules that I think has ever been assembled. UMass is going towards, they've made a real big push over the past 2 years. I'm sure you're familiar being a Mass kid. They're trying to become Massachusetts' team.
Absolutely.
And being the University of Massachusetts, they obviously have the right to do so. Boston College, clearly the superior program. People could beg to differ. But UMass is entering this season. They've got teams, Mississippi State, Florida, South Carolina on their schedule. They played Notre Dame last year, and they also have BYU. They had them this year, I believe, and next year on the schedule. So UMass is becoming a cupcake team for a lot of these programs, but what the coaching staff, what the athletic department thinks about the Minutemen is that they're going to go into this season and may get pounded upon, but that's going to teach them to almost enter a higher level of playing ability when you're matched up against these teams instead of just sticking with their AAC opponents. I believe that's what they're in, right? The American. Yeah. So they're doing. I like the move. I see that. I honestly feel 50-50 about it. If I'm a UMass Minuteman, I'm obviously looking towards the future and saying, you know what, maybe this is good for the program, that you want to see these big power teams in these very hostile environments. I mean, opening up the season at Florida, that's scary. And all these games are on the road, mind you, so you're not even bringing these big teams into Gillette.
Well, this is the one point. The Mississippi State game
is at home.
Gillette.
See, that's something I didn't know. That's a huge draw.
That's a huge draw.
In all
I will be at that game. I want to go to that game.
In all of Massachusetts, that's probably the biggest game on the year.
When do you see an SEC team come up north? When do you have an opportunity?
I couldn't tell you the last time an SEC team came into alumni. Yeah. So look at what they're doing. UMass is going out there and they're doing the exact opposite of what people saying Boston College doing, and they're scheduling higher level opponents. Now, UMass entering the Division I, Section 1, what was it, 3-4 years ago? It's very recent. That's probably when they made these moves, which people can contend that's why Boston College isn't making these moves just for this season. But you know, UMass, like you said, bringing an SEC team into Massachusetts is going to draw a lot of people to Gillette Stadium. It's a powerhouse team. Then going down to Florida, getting national exposure. I'm sure it's going to be on some type of TV somewhere. Same thing with South Carolina. These are all teams, SEC teams, that could provide a whooping to UMass, but they're going to learn from it. And who knows? Coming out of Florida and playing a Boston College team, especially if they lose over there in Dublin, that could be a huge trap game for the Eagles.
Absolutely. I will say, and you mentioned it, and you really put it perfectly, this is just two very opposite scheduling strategies. Whereas BC has taken the conservative route, and we'll break it down a little bit further as we go on. UMass is very much not taking that route. I'm shocked that Mississippi State is coming up here.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's so exciting for UMass. Like you said, the Gators, Mississippi State, and then South Carolina. Those are three big-time SEC programs. Even though they're not really at the top of the SEC right now,
doesn't matter.
UMass is catching them in a good time because they're still huge fan bases and they're teams that they can compete with. It's not like UMass is going out and scheduling the Alabamas and the LSUs of the world, but you're still getting that SEC nameplate on the jersey, and you still have a huge fan base that's watching.
Yeah, there's a lot that comes with it.
And that's very exciting. And what you gotta love is they also, if you look at the beginning of their season, you have Florida, then you have us, FIU, which is a conference game, Mississippi State, Tulane, which is a conference game. You don't have a cupcake game until week 5 at Old Dominion, and then they also play Wagner, is a couple weeks later, coming off the heels of the South Carolina game, going into another conference game. So you don't have these front-loaded cupcake games like BC is scheduling. You've got them spread out. You draw interest in the team early with games at Florida, and then an in-home rivalry with BC. And then as the season goes on, you get into conference play. You've established those people that want to watch your team. You've gotten recognition. And then, honestly, from just a player's standpoint, in terms of attracting players, last week of the season, non-conference game at Hawaii.
That's awesome.
What kid that is a smaller-time football player, doesn't have a lot of big offers, but gets one from UMass? That's a huge draw over a team. I know UMass is competing a lot with like Rutgers right now, and sometimes even with BC. You've got a lot of in-state kids who are choosing UMass. So if I'm an in-state kid, or if I'm a lower-level football player looking for a smaller D1 school, I'm going to UMass because I get to play Florida, I get to play South Carolina, Mississippi State, and I get to go spend the heart of winter, Saturday, November 26th, out in Hawaii.
It's a pretty attractive draw, isn't it? Yeah, I'd like to find a middle ground between our schedule and UMass's, but honestly, the huge success that UMass is going to find, and you put it perfectly with breaking down their schedule, is the really important one, and it's kind of like that marquee matchup that there are the 2 weeks that are going to basically spell the season and say, was this a success or not? When they go to South Carolina, depending on how that game goes, and they come back and play Wagner, if they destroy Wagner, you see the progression that this team's having. Certainly. And that's all they want to see. This year is not, they're not trying to go out there to, well, I mean, they obviously are trying to go out there and make a bowl game. It is possible if they can get 6 wins, but they're not trying to go out there and and turn a lot of heads, and maybe they do get one upset, and suddenly they become a program that gets a lot of national notoriety. I mean, think of a team like, I'm not trying to compare them to an Appalachian State, but an Appalachian State that everyone in America who follows college football knows because they had that huge upset over Michigan a few years ago. That's all they need is to shock the world one time, and people don't forget. That's why people around here talk about BC, USC like it was yesterday, and that's like the only highlight they can remember, if us being sophomores over their 2 years here. So
that's certainly. And what I really like about UMass's scheduling is that, yeah, certainly you've got 3 games that you're probably going to lose in Florida, South Carolina, and Mississippi State. But the thing is, you've also got 6 games in your schedule that you can pencil in as you should win this game.
Yeah.
So you can afford those 3 losses. You're not putting 6 tough games on the schedule, but you've got 3 losses that you can afford. You have 9 other games to get 6 wins out of, and you have an opportunity for a huge upset that doesn't hold bearing if you do lose that game.
Yeah, and you saying that the difference between the 2 schedules, UMass and BC's, is you can say the same with BC's. You can pencil in 6 wins and say these are 6 wins that we have to get, or pretty much write-ins at this point. But beyond that, they're talking about those other 6 games being either conference games or top-level opponents that we have no chance against, if you want to put it in quotation.
Certainly.
UMass, they're penciling those 6 wins, either lower level opponents or equal conference teams. That's where I think we differ. When we're penciling in our 6 wins, the majority of those are coming from not the ACC. They're coming from UMass, UConn, Wagner, Buffalo.
Yeah.
That's where they're coming from. Those other 2 we're penciling in a tentative. Wake Forest and Syracuse, 2 teams that beat us this year. So, I mean, how can you pencil it in? I guess it's just the confidence that BC has over the past 2 years, you could think. And we should, don't get me wrong. Based on the games this year, we deserved both of the losses, but we easily could have won both of the games, me being at both of them. So it's an interesting draw. I like what UMass is doing. They're definitely going the right way. Can't say if we are. It really does depend on how we do this season. That's the main thing. If we take this schedule and get 9 wins out of it, oh my God, people are like, BC's, a team to reckon with. We go 6-6, it's suddenly like, let's just do this year after year into a run of the mill,
Right.
So it really does depend. It's a swing of 2-3 games.
Sure. Well, so before we go further, I'll just give you the whole breakdown instead of going game by game.
Sure.
As we said, we have Georgia Tech opening up in Dublin, and then we're at UMass, which is essentially a modified home game, being it at Gillette Stadium. That's the only other real program in Massachusetts, so that's the biggest one you're going to get until you see in 2020 when we play at Holy Cross. We're at Virginia Tech after that. Then we're home against Wagner, home against Buffalo, home against Clemson on a Friday night game. And then we'll have a bye week, home against Syracuse, then at NC State, home against Louisville, at Florida State, another Friday night game, home against UConn, and then at Wake Forest to finish out the season over Thanksgiving weekend. So as you said, there are a lot of games in there that you think, you really should win. And I will say this. I remember sitting here at the beginning of the year before we had gotten into any games, and I really thought, looking at that schedule and looking how we performed last year and how we should progress into this season, that 9 wins was not out of the question. We were going to lose to Florida State, we're going to lose to Clemson, probably going to lose to Notre Dame.
Yep.
But other than that, every game was a winnable game.
Yep.
I think that a lot of injuries hurt that.
Yep.
But I still think if we had a healthy team throughout the season, even seeing how we played, I think 8 wins was not unattainable.
Sure.
I think that you could have come out of there with 8 wins. Shouldn't have lost to Duke. Shouldn't have lost to Wake Forest. Shouldn't have lost to Syracuse.
It was 5 games by a combined 14. That stat may be a little skewed, but
so
yeah,
you look at it this year. Now it's kind of taking the opposite lens. I don't have a season behind me that I'm very confident in. So now I'm coming with a less confident season where we went 3-9.
Yes.
So I'm looking at it. I'm saying, okay, good chance we don't win Georgia Tech.
Yep.
We're going to win UMass. Good chance we don't win Virginia Tech. We're going to win Wagner, Buffalo, probably not Clemson. Going to win Syracuse. Going to win NC State. Louisville's kind of a throw-up. Florida, we're probably not going to win. And then UConn and Wake Forest, we should be able to win. That's 7 right there, and that's bowl eligible. So whether that's through rose-colored lenses or whatnot, there are at least 4 out-of-conference games that you should win.
Yep.
Only one that doesn't count. And the one that doesn't count being at one of the 7 wins, it's FCS, so you need the 6 other wins.
Right.
But they're there. There are 6 wins for this team to go out and get.
Yep.
Looking at this schedule, And I know that it seems to be just our mantra here at this school. It's the way that Jim Christian likes to schedule the basketball out-of-conference games to just make sure they get wins, build confidence. Apparently now that's bleeding into football.
Mm-hmm.
We're scheduling some easy out-of-conferences. If you do not make a bowl game next year, it is an unmitigated disaster in my eyes. There is no reason this team should not walk out of next year without 7 wins.
I 100% agree with you. And the only problem, and the reason that's stopping is the reason that halted this year, and that's injuries. And there's so many question marks going into the next season that, honestly, I could easily see another 3-9. It's very possible. It is extreme. It's scary. It's sad to say, and I don't want to say it. And I'm one that has immense confidence in this program comparative to the students, the fan base, the bloggers, the whatever. Sure. I have a lot of confidence. I try to stay positive, and listen, our team has a lot of talent. They do. They were in so many games this year. Going down to Duke. I mean, even the Florida State, we lost by 7. Honestly, if it wasn't, yes. So you're one that called that one, so you know all too well what that game was like. Following that, a huge win against Northern Illinois. That was a very competitive team. If looking back on it, a very well-matched Power 5 lower-level team versus the top of the top from the MAC conference. So that's a good matchup for us.
Yeah.
And we came out with the win. That's why I don't have a problem with the Buffalo game. The only problem and we were talking about, the only problem with it is it's scheduled with so many other lower-level games that it puts it as the second worst game on the schedule when it should be just like in Northern Illinois was this year where it was okay. And people could say the same thing with Maine and Howard being on that schedule this year, but I don't have a problem with the Buffalo game. I have a problem with the Wagner game being next to it. That's where the huge issue is, and I don't think it's going to draw a lot of people in until Clemson in October as our first home game, which is upsetting. But back to your point with 7 wins, it's too easy. It's right there for the taking. Every single out-of-conference game is pretty much ours, or should be ours. But there's so many question marks that I just can't guarantee it.
No, it's
true. And that's what really upsets me. And it's quarterback. And you could break it down with Darius Wade is on a mission. He's on a mission to come back. He's put it on his Instagram. He's put it on social media. He's on a mission to come back and resurge this offense and be the guy. And we never really got to see what he was like.
No,
it's unfortunate. Now you got Patrick Tolles, somebody that's coming in from Kentucky, an up-and-down quarterback in Kentucky that can throw the ball. He's very proven to do that. He makes dumb mistakes. He is coming in, and they brought in a new offensive coordinator for him so that they're going to throw the ball more, which is everyone's been asking for since Steve Adazio came into the program. So you're going to get your wish this year. Somebody's going to be throwing the ball. If that's Wade, great. Let's see it. You got Tolles behind him. If it's not Tolles, it's Anthony Brown. I would love to see Anthony Brown sit out a year. I don't think he's ready. He needs to bulk up. He was great in New Jersey, don't get me wrong, but looking at if I was actually looking at some New Jersey numbers from high school, I'll actually present it as a trivia question. I'm going to see if you get it. 2014, so not this past season. Anthony Brown's a junior. He got second team All New Jersey MSG varsity rated him. Second team as quarterback. Who was first team quarterback? There's one guy that was on there, and that's Brandon Wimbush, the guy out in Notre Dame. But there were 2. The second hint, he's on Boston College.
Really?
Yes.
So then that would make it. His name is escaping me. He played this year though. He did.
Wide receiver Elijah Robinson.
Yes.
So that's where a question mark was thrown at me. Either Elijah Robinson is clearly better in high school than Anthony Brown was, and then had to switch because he wasn't better than Jeff Smith. That's where that throws up a red flag to me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a ranking system. Don't take this as fact that Elijah Robinson's better than Anthony Brown, and Elijah Robinson didn't even get a chance to be quarterback. Elijah Robinson has a completely different style, and he was better on his feet than Anthony Brown is, and Anthony Brown's a better thrower. But Anthony Brown's coming in with a lot of hype.
Yeah,
a lot of hype. He needs a year under his belt, and I think Patrick Tolles, he's somebody who has, I don't know if you follow Tolles on any social media, incredible positivity for the program. He's a hugely religious guy, really into Jesuit values and tradition. he clearly wants to be here at Boston College, and he made it his mission that after Kentucky, he's going to go somewhere and he wants to succeed. If he's going to be playing, that's another story. Who knows he's going to be the starter? It all depends on training camp. He's made it clear time and time again. He's excited for training camp. He wants to get here. Anthony Brown's on campus so that he can learn under Wade. He can learn under Tolles. Those are your two guys. Don't forget about Jeff Smith. He's still there, too.
Yeah.
I honestly see Jeff Smith moving into a different role after this season or going into this season. I think that'll benefit him. You have him and Robinson, and they start catching balls. Those are some guys you get in the open field. My goodness, that's fun. But especially with the loss of Sherman Alston, you need a slot guy. And Smith is not exactly the tallest guy in the world. So he fits into that well. That's your main question mark. Who's going to be your leader? If it's Tolles for a year, maybe he has a Tyler Murphy-like season, and we end up in a pinstripe bowl type thing with 7 wins again. That's a success for me, obviously, after this season.
Yeah,
you need a bowl game. I'm not expecting, the moon and the stars. I just want a bowl game from this year. I want a lot of confidence. That's what I need. Yeah. And going into our senior year with so many senior leaders, I think they truly deserve it and they can go get it this year. But there's a huge question mark on the quarterback position.
Absolutely.
Whoever it is clearly going to earn it. With a new offensive coordinator in there, Adazio clearly is going to be sicking the hounds on these guys. So it's going to be, and with a top-rated defense to go against in training camp, it should be very fun to watch. So that's your biggest question mark, but it's going to be deserving, whoever it is.
Right, and you know what? My thought I generally just like Tolles to start. If you're going to come here, you're going to be a graduate transfer. You have to have. No matter what anybody says, it's going to be completely unbiased during training camp. It's his job to lose. You don't come in as a fifth-year senior to not start.
And the only thing that could sway that would be Daz's confidence in Darius Wade, just because he never got a chance.
Right.
But yes, I agree with you.
The thing is, it's not like obviously we did not see too much of him, but he wasn't touted as such, and we didn't see it. Darius is not a passing quarterback per se. He's a dual-threat quarterback.
He didn't have many to beat in training camp either, which is just another thing. That's true. After watching this season,
right? So if you have a pass-heavy offensive coordinator come in, or even a pass-moderate offensive coordinator come in, perhaps that's not the best system for Darius Wade. So I'm happy if he takes this. He should be getting a medical red shirt for last year.
Yep.
So I'd be happy to see him take his now sophomore season off, let Tolles have it, and then see him start junior and senior, have Anthony Brown redshirt this year, and then he sits under Darius Wade for freshman and sophomore, and you have him junior and senior. I like Jeff moving, but I like Jeff right now at the fourth quarterback position. Okay. I don't think under any circumstance, and I think you agree with this, Anthony Brown should not be taking off a redshirt this year.
No, I don't
sit
see it.
out a year. Don't waste potential talent.
Right.
When we have this schedule to go against, when we have the players that we have out there, I think you need a year where you can show that the offense is a little bit more three-dimensional because, as we've said, we talked about it earlier, we lost KJ Gray in recruiting. He decommitted. We recently lost Scooter Harrington, a huge tight end recruit, the best recruit that we had. Your top recruit right now is Kobe White from New Jersey, and he's a 3-star wide receiver, and with the amount of wide receivers in the country, that doesn't mean a whole lot.
No.
He's not... We don't have a whole lot of weapons anymore. We're thinning at running back. We're not as deep as we have been, but we do still have a few good running backs. So hopefully, if they don't have to shoulder the load so much, they're not going to get as injured. They're going to be able to be a little bit more dynamic. And, if there's a year to excite prospects to come in, see some high-powered offense, this is the year. Yeah. There are 4 teams that have very subpar defenses that we're going against.
I agree with you, and there's a lot of opportunity, and the only way Brown's coming in is if it really goes bad, and I'm not going to rule it out, but you have a couple injuries here and there. It is very possible, but that's looking way down the line. Who knows if Adazio has a different plan? He could even be molding the plan around Brown. I highly doubt it. Like you said, he's going into the season with Tolles as his favorite and Wade as the true battery mate going back and forth. Those are the two guys who are going to challenge each other. I think Tolles can make Wade a much better thrower.
Certainly, yeah.
He's had some high-powered throws. He's just very inconsistent, and that's from any quarterback. And he's one who played in the SEC, so he's seen the best of the best. I think he'll compete well in the ACC. I'm excited to see what these guys can bring to the table. It's just the only issue I have with it is it's just so much time. There's so much time, and that's an issue from a fan perspective, not from a team perspective. You want more time to mold these guys, but we could talk about this for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. It's just not going to come into the true fruition until we're in August. Who knows? Even September. It could be September 3rd. We have no idea who's starting at this point with the way that the Dazio holds it out. But beyond that, really, really quick, you have Flutie and Fadul. Do they stay in the program?
I mean, honestly, no. Maybe Flutie goes back to wide receiver. Fadul, I mean, what's the reason? You have two quarterbacks coming in. Actually, we have one under Anthony Brown.
Mm-hmm.
They're backed up now. You got Tolles. You got
a lot of guys.
They're just there. Fadul
and Tolles, the only one who's leaving. I mean, all these guys are going to be here for another 3 years.
So, I mean, unless lightning strikes twice, Fadul's not going to see the field again.
Right. And I think I could see him moving to bulking up and becoming some type of other position player. Him being a walk-on, or I mean, if he really wants to play quarterback, he could probably go to a D2, D3 school in the local area. But those guys are always available too. So, a lot of intrigue going into the off season.
Absolutely. Well, as we said, this is going to be the year to get 7 wins. If there ever was a year,
this is a very make it or break it year.
That's exactly how I feel about it.
Honestly, 2 years with Adazio, where he turned the program around from the pretty much terrible disaster that it was under Spaziani, brought it up, and he had a lot of help. He had a lot of help with Andre Williams. That was a key guy in his first year. Tyler Murphy coming in. Maybe Patrick Tolles is someone we can add to that list, being the third guy to really jolt a season, as we didn't have a senior transfer coming in this year that made an impact. But those 2 seasons cancels out with this one terrible season. So this is a very, we talked about the defense being bend, not break for the entire year. Season 3 bends a lot. Season 4, it could break very easily, very fast. That's the whole thing about Adazio right now. If he's going to make a statement, I think he did a good job with bringing in a qualified defensive coordinator who has a lot of experience under his belt. I'd like to see someone a little younger, but hey, you know what? Brown wasn't the youngest guy in the book either, and he did a heck of a job, and the players loved him. So who knows what Jim Reed can truly bring to the table, and then bring in Loeffler from Virginia Tech, someone that found success in the offense. We had a lot of trouble with him this year, and he did a good job against our high-powered defense. So he's making steps in the right direction. People can complain about the scheduling all they want. At the end of the year, when we're talking in December of 2016, we can really tell if the schedule is worth it or not.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we will digress a little bit on that topic. Perhaps we've got later on the docket some BC hockey, and maybe we can move into some NFL right now.
Sure.
All right. Well, so championship weekend, conference championship weekend came and went. It was not the best weekend for one of your two lovely hosts here. For the other one, I don't know if he's like the other Giants fan.
I just wanted to see I just wanted to see 2 very good games. I didn't really care who came out on top, to be honest. If I'm going to be biased, I wanted the Patriots and I wanted the Panthers. I think that's the most exciting game you could throw in the Super Bowl. I went 1 for 2. The Panthers game was terrible. No one would want to watch that unless they just enjoy Cam Newton running around the field, which is very enjoyable to some. But I like this matchup. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, just because the Broncos are a very systematic, slow-moving, 5-yard throw after 5-yard throw, and then a very swarming defense. That's probably the most exciting part of their game, with a lot of people don't even want to see defense. But I think the most exciting part of the Super Bowl is going to be Cam Newton on the field with the Broncos defense against him. But going back to the championship games, yes, if you want to talk about your heartbreaking defeat, it was one where this is coming from a non-Patriots perspective. It was honestly, it was either team's game. I don't think anyone played out of their mind to rightfully deserve it. I think the Pats lost it with the way that they played. Brady threw a lot of early picks. Not a lot, but more than Brady throws, yes. Patriots never established a running game. which is very characteristic of their offense just because that's not how they're built. Their defense struggled early with Peyton Manning. He threw one ball to Daniels that was, picturesque MVP Peyton Manning type. But it still came down to the wire, and that's because of one guy, and that's Rob Gronkowski. That dude is fun to watch, and that's why I wanted him in the Super Bowl. He catches everything. And it came down to the 2-point conversion, which honestly, like the whole 3.5 quarters was not the most exciting football game. Obviously, being a Patriots fan, it's a little different, but it was not the most exciting football game for me. But that final half quarter, that was awesome. I really did enjoy that. Patriots going down, a lot of fourth down throws or third down and long throws to Rob Gronkowski getting it done. Came down to a touchdown. Gronkowski looks like he came from the first row of the stadium, jumped in the back of the end zone, made the catch, and then 2-point conversion just didn't work out. And I don't know if you've seen the breakdown of that play. It was on Barstool the other day. That was awesome. That was really cool what the Broncos did. Just throwing so many different looks. Yeah. That, if I was an offensive guy, I would have zero idea. But if you want to go for it.
The thing about that, and to just get to that, and then maybe we can backtrack a little bit on the game, but in that last play, in the 2-point conversion that they lost on, they threw a lot of different schemes, but it is all broken up if you make one block.
Yep.
If DeMarcus Ware does not get through the line unblocked, and Brady finds Gronkowski.
That's the
wide
story
open.
of the whole game too, by the way. Your offensive line, and that's why your offensive line coach got the boot the other day. But
yeah, absolutely.
My goodness, they were, and you know what? And I think the line of the Broncos is underrated of some sorts. There wasn't a lot of hype going into the game. If anything, they were talking about their linebackers, and that's Ware and Miller playing the outside linebacker and the middle linebacker position. I didn't really know much about the line, but every single time, I've never seen Brady on his butt more. It was crazy how fast they got in there.
And that was characteristic of the whole season. They have just been abysmal on the offensive line, but he's been good about getting it off. This was the best defense. This is the best defense in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So it took that for them to finally, he was off his game too. I really felt like in that first quarter, you saw Brady playing how we expected Manning to play, and Manning playing how you expected Brady to play. There were a few frustrating moments in the first quarter where they were getting open and Manning was throwing ducks and they were still working out. Like Owen Daniels, he absolutely had one that was a strike of a throw, but then he had one that was just like lobbed up there and Owen Daniels had it.
Yep.
But I still, the defense didn't play poorly. You only allowed 20 points with the worst field position battle I have seen in a long time. Mm. The Patriots started 3 drives inside their own 10, and it always ended up in the Broncos having it around their own 40, if not coming into territory. It's so frustrating. It's frustrating from a number of different standpoints. One, because especially when you see Peyton have the season that he had this year, it's always on the horizon, and you're so afraid of that. And quite frankly, just the time is ticking. Like, I think Brady's still got a few more years in him. I very much believe that he's got a few more years.
He's not going anywhere yet.
At least play at this level. But at the same time, you just never know, and the clock is definitely ticking. I think next year it becomes a must get it done because the defense has a lot of contracts that come up in 2017 after that season, or 2018, I guess it would be technically. 2017. After next Super Bowl, they have a lot of contracts that come up. So next year is really, now there's a lot of pressure to get it done next year. From a from a city kind of standpoint, the whole Deflategate thing was obviously just so frustrating, and there would have been nothing better than to take the trophy from Goodell. Mm-hmm. And even just to make it to the Super Bowl, even if you don't win, just to force the NFL to put so much attention on this team whom you have just slandered over and over again throughout that entire season, and instead you get the exact opposite. You get Peyton Manning, whom the NFL doesn't even want to address the fact that he possibly was on HGH. Right. And it's just it's such polar opposites of the way each team is handled, the way each individual player is handled between Brady and Manning. So it's just frustrating. Obviously, it's not the way it looks from the rest of the country, but if you're here in New England, it looks like, the bad guy made it and the good guys got sent home. Right. And at least, you just feel like it was a kind of quest for righteousness, and then making it to the Super Bowl. That was the goal. I said here early on last year and said to you, this team is not going undefeated. I don't know why people think that's the goal. It shouldn't be the goal. The goal is to make it to the Super Bowl. You know, you have a couple bad losses. You lose to the Broncos. It's frustrating because, again, they shouldn't have lost that game.
Right.
They lost that game, and you know, some of it's on the calls, some of it's on them just not playing poorly. They shouldn't have been in that position to lose that game. But regardless, I very much hated overbreak, sitting at home watching the way they played the Jets and the Dolphins.
That lost home field advantage for you, which honestly
it
would have been a huge swing in that Denver game.
Absolutely. And frankly, I can't get past the apologists who are trying to say, oh, you know what? Like, they were playing that way. They really didn't want the Steelers. That's not the way they play.
There's nothing you can predict in that, too.
No. I simply do not accept that they intentionally gave up home field advantage so they didn't have to play
I wouldn't
the
put it
Steelers.
past Belichick just because that's the kind of guy he is with these crazy
No,
mind schemes.
Put it
but,
past him.
I mean, the Jets are a good team who deserve to be in the playoffs, in my opinion. They lost it themselves in that Bills game the final week, but going out there playing the Patriots very, very competitively over break, and then the Patriots somehow just throwing up a duck against the Dolphins.
That was even more infuriating to me.
Didn't even watch the game, but
no, I mean,
I was more interested in the Bills-Jets game that was going on.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's very intriguing to me, those last two losses. I mean, it almost gave, well, for the Jets, it gave Jets a lot of confidence that you probably didn't want to do to an NFC East rival, or AFC East rival, excuse me. But they didn't make it anyway. And then the Dolphins one's just a complete question mark. Beyond that, I mean, tearing apart the Chiefs for 3/4 of a game and then having the Chiefs come back, it was almost kind of a writing on the wall situation of like, hey, we have a little bit of an issue here with you know, and the Chiefs were arguably one of the hottest teams in the AFC.
They were.
They had nothing, and the Patriots defense is, in my opinion, you know, nothing to be afraid of. But they do have their strongs, and they showed it against a very hot Chiefs team. But you saw them, like you said, there was moments of greatness out of Peyton Manning, and then there was moments of injured Brock Osweiler starting over you, Peyton Manning. And that team that we're talking about, Peyton Manning being benched, Brock Osweiler taking over, and now Peyton Manning starting the Super Bowl. I mean, how about a 3-6? I mean, I've never seen a 180, a 360, whatever you want to call it, in such a manner before. That team is just probably one of the least glamorous teams to make a Super Bowl in my recent memory.
There was a time in this season when there was a serious question as to whether or not they were going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
He has to have... And
it's because of their defense. You can compare them to the Giants when they were in there in 2007. Same thing.
I can't imagine that there has ever been a starting quarterback in the Super Bowl who had a worse stat line than Peyton had this season. Peyton...
Yeah. It's just because his name's Peyton Manning. It's the only reason he got a second look.
Absolutely. And the frustrating thing, just in like just being kind of a sourpuss about it, is that this game didn't end up being a Brady Manning game.
No.
I mean, Brady played down to him.
A lot of people wanted to see, but...
Absolutely. Brady played down to him, so it's not like it was Brady coming out. But even if Brady had excelled and the Patriots had won that game, he wasn't beating Peyton. He was beating the Broncos. And I very much feel like Peyton did not beat the Patriots. The Broncos defense beat the Patriots.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
And it's frustrating because of how... You know, the Patriots clearly do struggle with the Broncos. Yep. In championship games, they do struggle with Peyton. But it felt like on this one, it wasn't Peyton's doing. I really just... I very much... I think I've probably... It's probably been documented on this show at some point that the season prior that Peyton was out earlier on in his career with his neck, I gained a lot more respect for him, a lot more enjoyment for watching him play because it was a different league that year. Sure. It came when you don't have necessarily the up and budding talents of Cam Newton, of some of these other young guys who are
Cam Newton's a saving grace for this league, by the way. But
absolutely. And so it was very much, it was a noticeable absence. It was too bad. Playing Charlie Whitehurst and the Colts, or I think it was Charlie Whitehurst at that point.
It could be Curtis Painter too, but yeah, there's a lot of guys you can throw out there. It's pretty gross.
It was not enjoyable. I was at that game actually. It was a totally different feel to it. It was hard to get hyped for that. You enjoy having Peyton. This one, it would have been nice. It would have been fitting as a Patriots fan for him to presumably play his last game and fall to Brady, because as much as this game is not representative of it, I still feel like when it's all said and done, it's Brady Manning. It is not the reverse. It would have been nice for Brady to kind of be able to put that demon to rest, both literally and figuratively. But they didn't get it done. And
I mean, it's the same reason why people say that, in head-to-head matchups, Eli's better than Brady, which, I mean, being a Giants fan, if you could say hands down who would you rather have, gun to your head, who are you taking? It's obviously Brady every single time. Brady's a much more dynamic quarterback. They both can't run, which is awesome. But I mean, from a pure selfish standpoint, I'll take Brady, 99 out of 100 days. But I still love Eli, don't get me wrong. But in those head-to-head matchups in the Super Bowl, Eli's 2, Brady's 0. And that's the first one clearly goes to the Giants defense. I mean, Strahan, Umanura, Tuck, Kiwanuka. I could go on and on about that team. My Lord, what a team in 2007 that was. And Manning made one big throw is why the reason people are like, Manning, better than Brady, and that's Eli and Peyton. And like you said, it upsets you more than anything just because, listen, everyone in the back of their head knows that Tom Brady is better than both of these guys but you could probably back it on paper, but then if you could say who would we want, to run your team for 10 years, you'd take Tom Brady 100 out of 100 times. And it's strictly because Tom Brady is a villain-like character that everyone loves to hate. That's what it is. Peyton Manning's not one of those guys that people love to hate. I mean, if you're New England, yes, but a lot of people like Peyton Manning. He's a likable guy. Same thing with Eli, I feel. Maybe not recent Eli with the way that he's played. He clearly isn't to the level that Peyton has reached in people's perceptions. Right. But honestly, I mean, Brady, everybody talks down Brady. I think I said that right. Down talks Brady, not talks down. But down talks Brady strictly because he's better, and you're jealous that he's not your quarterback. And when you break down head-to-head matchups and you take the Mannings, taking all of these away from Brady, people are just like, haha, especially with Giants fans and Colts fans or Broncos fans saying Manning's better. You almost got to take it, a shot to the chest just because we all know, but that 5-1 stat line looks pretty darn good. Yeah,
it's true.
It's just what it is.
And the thing is, it's just. I mean, we talked about it last year. We talked about it leading into the Super Bowl. I remember sitting in here. We had the research in front of us. In my mind, statistically proved. It's tough because
you proved it to me. Yeah.
At least, Brady won that fourth Super Bowl. So especially if we were to go back and adjust those stats and look at it now. I think unequivocally it's very hard to not acknowledge that he's the greatest. Like, I think that, you can still make the case it's him or Montana. It is not Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, even if he walks in and wins, I don't think then...
It helps, but
it absolutely helps, but I don't think he wins.
He didn't win this year. I mean, he wasn't even the quarterback for a third of it.
And regardless of the fact that they lost, which is frustrating, they've been in 5 straight AFC championships. That's unheard of. That's crazy. It's just unbelievable for Brady. And I really felt like, especially if you were to go back-to-back again, you come back this year, you win your 5th, it is so, so hard for people to say he's not the greatest quarterback ever. Mm-hmm. But he needed to get it done, and, he
wins this year.
I mean,
I think it's so hard, especially for our generation, to say that, we grew up with Tom Brady.
Yeah.
We hit our stride at age 6 when Brady entered the league, or 5, depending on your year. So you pretty much started watching football or start remembering football when Tom Brady's been your guy. And since then, Patriots' success has been more towards the middle 2000s and started to find it again. It's been long lasting, don't get me wrong, but Super Bowls. So he's one of those guys that if he would have won this year, it's just Brady after Brady after Brady after Brady. You just don't remember a league without Brady.
No,
that's the whole thing. So I think that helps your cause for why he's the best. Older people would clearly say, Montana, and somebody made the case for Unitas yesterday, which I thought was interesting.
Well, that's always been the one
that's almost like a Babe Ruth type thing, in my opinion.
Right, exactly. It's so hard to say. So few people saw him play.
It's a comparison thing. Like a lot of people were. There's 2 different ways that you can look at it. I think it's an interesting debate thing, but there is no way you can clearly say who was the best quarterback of all time just because the game has evolved in different fashions, so on and so forth. That's why, I mean, the discussion's great. You can go back and forth, and people are never going to agree on who's the best, and opinions will vary across the board because there is no clear cut. You can say of specific eras. I mean, clearly over the path from 2000 and so just from 2000 to 2015, a 15-year stretch, you have to say Tom Brady. You have to say. But if you want to say all time, you can bring in Montana. You can bring in Unitas from the start. You can bring in Bart Starr. You can bring in
And the thing is, that's why, I mean, I think that Unitas is probably the best case just because he had so much before you had the NFL.
Transformer of the game,
Yeah, when it was so different. And so he makes a good case for it. But again, my thing with Brady and Montana is that if Brady right now, absolutely, you cannot unequivocally say Brady is the best.
Correct.
Because, yeah, sure, I mean, he's been to more.
Yeah, I mean,
but he lost twice. Yep. They're still the same amount of wins. Even though Brady is ahead of him statistically, it's just what they had to work with.
Exactly.
Blah, blah, blah.
It's a
There's
different
so many
game,
facets to break down. But if Brady gets one more, if Brady gets two more, I think then that you really solidify an argument for him.
Sure.
And from just a selfishness of wanting to be able to say, he was on my team. I grew up watching him. He's my guy. I have been with him from the beginning. You want to be able to say that you watched the greatest ever play.
It's the same thing as MJ versus LeBron. It's a different era. These two guys grew up when basketball was a different game. It's much more of a 3-point, high-flying game than it was back then, where it was fundamentals and playing for your team than is hey, let's make super teams and go on. So people can compare that left and right. Another interesting point with the Baseball Hall of Fame coming out, Ken Griffey Jr., 2 people, I think, didn't vote for him to make the Hall of Fame just because they wanted to keep the ballot. They didn't want it to be a unanimous vote because they believe in traditions. Babe Ruth didn't get in. Why should Ken Griffey get in unanimously? But that's the same thing. Ken Griffey was one of those guys in the 1990s that, I mean, if he would have stayed healthy and been as athletic as he was when he was with the Mariners, my God, we're looking at a modern day, whatever you want to compare him to. Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle. Probably Mickey Mantle will be the best comparison, but that's a guy that clearly earned his spot in the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
But can you say he was the best of all time? People are not going to contest that because he had a lot of injury issues. But for people to say, it's the same thing. Those 2 people are ones that are like, well, it never will be a best of all time because, the best of the best were in, 1900. It's the same thing. It's fun to have the debate. I just don't think anyone ever you could solidify as, hey, this was the best of all time. It's just not the way it is. But I do love the debate.
All right. Well, we've got about 15 minutes.
And we'll do a Super Bowl preview next week too.
Yeah, certainly.
But yes.
When it stings a little bit. I think. All right. And I'll go with this. Objectively,
sure.
I think that it's a better matchup if the Pats are there, because I think that
Brady versus Newton is every day on ESPN 24 times.
That's true. Yeah. Absolutely. For me, it's that I don't think that. I mean, obviously, again, I've said it so many times, but selfishly, I am hoping that Carolina runs away with it, just because for justification and at least to make it in my mind. Okay, so maybe if we made it, then we wouldn't have had the chance to win, and it would have been okay. It's not. We didn't necessarily have a chance. But then on top of that, Denver posed a very specific matchup problem for us.
Oh yeah.
The fact that they were able to penetrate that offensive line so often and so many times.
Carolina's got a good offensive line too, and a completely different quarterback.
Absolutely. So I mean, they have a mobile. Yeah, right. They have a mobile quarterback. I think Carolina's offense can deal with them, and I think Carolina's defense doesn't have a lot to deal with.
No.
You're right. I think that
it's very honestly 75% of the game that I want to watch is happening between a Carolina offense and a Denver defense, and then maybe I'll tune in to the Denver offense taking on and the only reason I want to watch Carolina defense just because Luke Kuechly's an absolute monster. But yes, I agree with you that there's one matchup of that game that everyone's going to be watching, and that's Cam Newton taking on that pretty much daunting Broncos defense the way they played against the Pats, which were the clear favorites of the AFC going into it. So that's that. Yeah, that's that. On we'll have more on the Super Bowl preview. I think you want to jump into some hockey, huh?
Yeah, sure. We'll talk a little bit.
Sounds good. So For those of you who don't know, Boston College Eagles, preseason number 1, are now number 5 in the polls. They're doing the little up and down dance right now. Sometimes they stayed number 1 for the longest time. They had a tough Christmas break schedule. Not schedule, but run, where they had a heartbreaking loss against Notre Dame, went down to Florida, came in last place in a Florida tournament between Ohio State, Providence, Cornell, and BC, and they came in last place in that. It's something that they easily should have come in second at the very least. So they dropped a lot in the polls, down to, I think their lowest was 11 at one point. Yep. Then losing to Providence, tying Providence, and then beating Providence, I believe.
They lost to Providence down in Florida. That was
right.
Game. And the
beat
one
them
thing
at
about
home, tied them at Providence.
Yeah. The one thing about that tournament is that BC, while they're so good, what makes them so good is these players that have juniors duty.
Yep.
So that weekend came, and it looks like one terrible loss and then one game that you would have hoped you could have won against somebody who is now regarded as a stronger opponent in Providence. But BC was not rolling full lineup by any means. Colin White's gone, Tuck's gone for those games. And then on top of that, you also have the fact that in BC fashion, the hockey team has been very injured this year.
Yeah.
They have it when we came back and we played that first game against Providence, it was the first time since the second week of the season that they had been rolling full forward lines. So the fact that they had the full healthy, they knew it was really, they felt like it was a must win. And I said this when I was on the call for the Providence game. I said, I sat here last year and I called the Providence game for BC when they played, and they beat Providence last year 4-3. And that game was vitally important because at that point they were 17th in the country, and it was really a question as to whether or not they were going to make the tournament.
Right.
And it didn't look good from there. But they beat Providence, who was a very good team, who ended up being the national champions, and that sparked them forward. They did make the tournament. Obviously didn't fare well. They lost first round. But it wasn't a waste of a season by any stretch.
Sure.
This year, and I've said this from the beginning of the year, you need to hop on the fan wagon. This is the best team you are going to see in your 4 years.
I agree. A lot of people are going to jump ship after this year, most likely, depending on how the outcome is. But
certainly. I mean, they're a very, very talented team. They can turn it on like no team that
it's
I've
insane
seen
the talent level between
it
last year and this year.
It is unbelievable.
Imagine if Hannafin would have stuck and Bracco didn't bounce. My God.
Yeah.
We'd be looking at a possibly, I don't want to say undefeated team, but, I mean, you can't get much better than 16-4-4, and that's what we're presenting right now.
Right.
But, adding on to that, the stretch after Providence was a win against BU and a tie against BU, a win at UMass. Jerry York, his 1,000th win. Congratulations to Coach York, well-deserved. Then playing UConn in a tie, a disappointing game overall. Not really sure how to bet really bow tie it or anything. It was just a kind of a back and forth game where we couldn't really generate any offense. Their goalie was playing decent, and Thatcher had a couple mental lapses. Our offense wasn't clicking on full cylinders. Fitzgerald was out. A couple things here and there.
The way they were rolling the defensive lines was tough.
Yeah.
We sat in the stands, watched that game, and said, "Oh my God, they are playing so heavily on that fourth line," which was crazy to see. You saw Teddy Dots moved up to forward. I know they're now kind of transitioning.
He's
Maybe that's
jumping
what
back,
he's going to be doing. But he's going back and forth. Definitely needed somebody on defense in that game. If I'm a BC fan, no offense, don't want to see Peter McMullen out there. Don't want to see one of two walk-ons on the team. That's a red flag to me.
Yeah.
But I felt like they did play very well throughout that game. What it came down to was you had that big rush in the middle where they started playing really well, got really hot on offense. And that was when Creel started playing really well.
Yep.
And I said, when we went into overtime, I said, you know what? It stinks that we put ourselves in this position that we need to go into overtime. But if you look at the last 5 minutes of regulation, even maybe the last 7 minutes of regulation, it was ours to win in overtime.
Yeah.
It was not a level contest. But the story, which is always the story it seems for this team, was, we get up. We're up 3-2 going into the third period. The one thing to their credit, they are 9-0-2 when leading in the third period. They haven't lost a game that they've gone into the third period leading yet.
Notre Dame. Notre Dame's definitely won. I know that one.
Really,
that one hurt
BC
me bad.
just tweeted us that
Really?
Were we
That's
not tied going into? No, we weren't because we were up.
Definitely
yeah,
not.
You're right. We were up.
That's one of the most heartbreaking games I've called. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that's.
No, you're right.
What that stat's based upon. But yes,
So,
Notre Dame's probably an
9-1
outlier just because of how they always have our number.
We go in 3-2. We are very good, at least, going in with the lead. It was a team that we should beat. They're not a good team. They were 7-14-2 coming in. And then, in typical fashion of the hockey team, it is the one thing that plagues this team year in and year out. They were undisciplined. They give up that penalty, and UConn's able to score on the power play. And then they knotted up, and no matter how much we rushed, we just weren't able to get that goal back. It was unfortunate, and you really just can't. I can't stand to see them keep tying. You know, it's really time late in the season for the teams to kind of buckle down. They've got some big games ahead of them. As you said, we got Notre Dame this Friday, and then you're into the Bean Pot, and you've got Harvard, presumably, you've got Harvard first off, who's a very good team. They're at 7 right now. A huge surprise from them this season.
Yeah.
And then if you can win that, then you've got BU. If you don't win that, then you've got, presumably, Northeastern, who you struggled with earlier this season.
You can end up last in the Bean Pot. It's very possible, but I don't see it happening. And this is a huge stretch for them if you want to keep going through the games. But Notre Dame is they haven't lost. They've tied. They have not lost their last 12. They are 9-0-3. So this is a really tough game for us. Notre Dame's always had our number. They came into Conti, came back and won. If we get a win out there in the one game that we play them in South Bend, huge Absolutely. Confidence going into the Bean Pot. We beat Harvard. Suddenly we're in the top 4 easily with those 2 wins.
Right. I mean, we just fell out of the top 4.
I know.
Top 4 last ranking.
We're right around it. And it's going to depend on who we draw if we aren't in the top 4, is who's the top seed, because that's, I mean, clearly with Quinnipiac, North Dakota, St. Cloud State, and Providence, those are all top of the level teams, and hockey's one of those games that could swing so easily in any direction at any given time that you want to be in those top 4.
Yeah,
you don't want to be matched up with a team that's ahead of you. You want to be that number 1 seed. BC's found much success with that. Beyond that, New Hampshire, a weaker level team in the Hockey East that we shouldn't have an issue with, and it's on Jerry York night, so a lot of momentum. Then you got second round of the Bean Pot. Merrimack back to back, another team that that we should be able to handle. Vermont, same thing. This is where it's coming into our own here. Then we have to play Hockey East number 1 at UMass Lowell. 1 home, 1 at Lowell. So the way the schedule is designed is we're going to hit the majority of our divisional games at the end, or conference games, at the end of our year. And I think that's to our benefit. I really do. With the out-of-conference games that we played, and then playing our conference foes, though, it wasn't great for the students in coming back off of break and allowing time to really settle down, and then not hitting them with the first game too, which was great. You saw that we lost that, one being to Ohio State, one being to Providence. But coming in and playing those teams and then playing the weaker Hockey East teams, not that any team is really weak in the Hockey East. Any team can beat you at any given time. That's the way that hockey rolls. We're looking good right now. We are. Looking good. We are. We're coming back to healthy. The only person that's not coming back is Silk. I'm pretty sure he has nerve damage of some sort, so he's someone that hasn't been with the team the entire year, though. You really need to stay healthy and keep these freshmen at the top of their, on their toes. If they can earn a number 1 seed going into the NCAA tournament, we got a good chance. We're clearly a team that can beat any team. We're also a team that can lose any game.
Yeah.
We're very high risk, high reward, but it really does depend. And Thatcher has to be in this game too. If he doesn't have mental lapses, there's not a team in the world who can beat us. He's clearly the one.
I think he's the best goalie in hockey.
Yeah, I mean, I being biased, I'm going to say Thatcher Demko. There's a little, there's goalies that could contend him, but I mean, overall, based on this entire year in comparison to last year too, Demko's, he's, almost unhuman at this point.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree. I think the schedule is structured in a perfect way for them. As you said, Notre Dame would be a huge win, but that's a game that you need to walk out of there with a point.
Yep.
The Bean Pot is really yours to take. It is still you and BU's tournament, and especially where it was disappointing last year. They felt like they should have been, but then were really upset by Northeastern. You really want a BU-BC matchup in in the championship of that, and frankly, you just want another opportunity to play BU outside of perhaps the Hockey East tournament. But then with your conference games being New Hampshire, 2 Merrimacks, and 2 Vermonts, it gives you a chance to presumably, or at least gives you a very good chance of getting 5 wins, adding that to your total. And then after that, you have UMass Lowell, so you really get tested right before you go into the Hockey East tournament. It's a great way to see how you're standing, and if you can go out of there and get 2 big wins, especially with that very last one being at UMass Lowell, then it really gives you some good momentum heading into the Hockey East tournament, where they very much struggled last year.
Oh yeah, so a lot to look forward to with the hockey team. Obviously, the crown jewel of the Heights at this point, with our other teams struggling, the 3 power teams that we're talking about, basketball, football, and hockey. So we're putting all of our energy behind the hockey team. We really hope they do this year, and I really hope they end up at Tampa, at least giving us a chance or a shot in Jerry York's 1,000th win season to make it happen with these young guns, because this is the year to do it. So, like I said, like Quinn said, a lot to look forward to. I think we have a lot to prove, but we also have a lot to lose. I think we're clearly the favorites heading into the into playoff season, and overall, I'm really excited for it. I am truly excited for it. So we'll be back next Wednesday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. that you're listening to Two Dudes Sports Show. We will have a Super Bowl preview heading into Super Bowl Sunday weekend. That's going to be February 3rd, 8 p.m. right here on WVBC AM station here in Newton, the little sister of WZBC 90.3 FM Newton. I'm TJ Hartnett.
I'm Quinn Kelly.
Thank you for joining us. We'll play it out.
Matt Ryan, 21 of 24, 286 yards, 3 touchdowns. Still a
It's
dude.
better than this. Guys being dudes.
Matt Ryan,
That's a dude.
Heisman Trophy.
Bronco Nagurski Award. Ultimate dudes.
Raji on my left, Herzog on my right.
2 dudes. O-line you. Bunch of dudes.
Dudes to the right, dudes to the left, stuck in the middle with you.
WZBC, the Boston College Radio Network, the voice of the Eagles.